Is it possible to survive Dying Light with only broken weapons? Weapons at 0 durability in this game do almost no damage to the enemy. But with that being said, is it possible to beat the game without using anything else? Let's see if it is. I'll be playing the game on Nightmare difficulty, and since I'll be soloing this experience, this is going to be quite the challenge. On top of everything else, I'm not allowing myself to use the kick ability, because even my kick and the old boomsticks I call for arms can do more damage than broken weapons, somehow. But anyway, we start our journey by being dropped in by parachute to the heart of the city of Marron. Our whole lore in this game is that we are Kyle Crane, a GRE operative who was sent into the infection zone to retrieve a file from a rogue political figure. I crash land on this pole and last approximately 13 seconds in this new land before getting beat up by some random dudes and then bitten when I decide to defend myself. What is this, Gotham? We end up being saved by a pair of runners, but I must say that Crane here started off with a dud. Remember, we're a highly trained special operative and we got folded over and spanked within 3 seconds of stepping foot on the ground. I don't think much else could have gone wrong here. Sadly, the man, whose name is Amir, ends up dying and we're taken to the tower with Jay where we meet the runners, who are essentially the protagonists of the story. Apparently our tale has already spread while we were unconscious, and people aren't too keen about us being alive. What's that? You say you got beat up by some goons and bitten like the rest of us?
You bitch, I'm gonna punch you in the face.
We go in search of the boss leader guy for the tower, and find this 16-year-old looking kid who's pretending to be him. He throws a fit about me not letting him keep my radio, and tells us some guy is trapped on the 13th floor. He may as well be trapped in a mine cave-in, he said. This is one of the most dangerous situations Raheem has ever seen. So, I trepidatiously make my way to the 13th floor to save this guy. This could very well be my last mission ever. I step through the door and quickly hear the call for help. Hold on! I'm coming! There we go. Okay, so this zombie in particular must be scripted to die in one hit or something, even on Nightmare mode, because I assure you this never happens again. But this was the Avengers level threat that Raheem was so scared of? There was one zombie. Why was it so dangerous to come to this floor? I expect Raheem here to break out the old microphone and sing his praises to me since I just beat the final boss of the tower, but instead he just kinda gives me a and teaches me a tiny bit of parkour before sending me on my first real mission. As soon as I leave the building, I decide to test the waters by fighting a couple zombies and getting the hang of things. For those of you who have played Dying Light before, you know just how much of a pain Nightmare mode is on its own. But if not, imagine smacking a concrete pillar with a stick for 3 hours straight. That's about what it feels like to fight these zombies right now. It actually takes me about 15 minutes before these zombies go down, and let's just say I'm not feeling great about the rest of the challenge at the moment. With this knowledge, once all of them are taken care of, I move on to a nearby safe zone to talk to Dr. Zera, who is a scientist who's researching a cure for the virus. Wait, hold up. I know he's old, but does anyone really need that big of folders on their computer? But anyway, he gives us a bit of antizin, which is pretty much just a temporary cure for the virus, and sends us on our way. The game has some nasty surprises in store for me very soon, but little does it know, I've got a few surprises for it being thought up as we speak, so more on that soon. I'm getting a feeling that pipes are just not the way to go, and me being the veteran Dying Light player I am, I know that there's a certain weapon out there somewhere that would fit this challenge perfectly. So since the daytime at this point in the game is unlimited, I make my way to it. This, ladies and gentlemen, is XP Caliber, one of the numerous developer weapons in the game. It has 7 durability and can't be repaired, but it does a boatload of damage in comparison to everything else I'm currently using. Usually I'm pretty quick to throw this thing away, but since I'm not worrying about durability, it makes the perfect addition to the challenge. It's still not great by any means, but hey, at least it's not taking me 20 minutes to kill one zombie. Now with some sort of actual weapon, Spike here sends us on a mission to set up for a nighttime raid that the tower leader Brecken is gonna do with a team of runners later in the night. If we don't get these traps working, there's a good chance he'll die, so I make my way and strategically complete every objective, and by strategically I mean I sit up really high and just smack zombies below me for what seems like 30 years. Eventually, all the new electrical appliances on the grid blow a breaker or something, and now we gotta go fix that because nighttime is approaching fast. So we head over there and it's time for our first actual challenge of the playthrough. This is a goon, apparently. apparently, and there's not a whole lot I can do about them, honestly. On Nightmare mode, if they manage to land one single good hit on me, they will instantly kill me. What ends up happening for the next 15 or so minutes is I run up to it, smack it a few times, and backstep to dodge its attack. I tried a whole ton of things. Goons don't die to fire, they don't get locked into any animations, and they tend to avoid blowing things up with their massive weapon. But eventually, with enough hits, he finally goes down. The grid is back up, and now we need to sprint directly to the nearest safe zone before night begins. We encounter a new zombie type, which we eventually find out is called a bolter, and that's the end of our first mission. In my eyes, my having gone to get the XP caliber was a great idea. It's still doing some hard work on the zombies, and I just so happen to know of another developer weapon that's even more powerful. I don't need to think about it twice, so I set out. I sprint all the way across the map, then spend about 10 minutes trying to climb this building and kicking this box to get the weapon. This is the Korek machete, and it's an absolute beast. Let me just equip it and... Oh. Yeah, it turns out you're not able to use the Korek machete in Nightmare mode. I certainly wish I knew that before I spent the time to come and get it. Okay, let's talk for a second. We're only 3% of the way through the story right now, and I've been smacking this goon for like 20 minutes. Are goons just invincible now? I'm not sure why I was just able to kill the last one to progress the story, and this one just will not die. I have a couple theories for this. One, the enemies get tougher as the story goes on. Or two, special infected like the goon are just a bit different when it comes to health if they aren't related to the story. Maybe you guys can let me know because I could not find a thing about it online. But anyway, back to the show. In Dying Light, nighttime other than the first assignment mission never happens until you finish this airdrop quest. So now that I've gotten my testing and weapon hunting out of the way, I don't have a reason to keep it daytime indefinitely. So we make our way to the airdrop, die to some guys, which is the first step of the playthrough, find some antizin, and throw it in the fire so it gives us an excuse to see if this Rais guy is the political figure we're looking for. Then, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to the bread and butter of the game franchise. I still remember the first time I played through this game, and this section scared the crap out of me. The countdown and constant warnings that night is coming gives off a sense of impending doom, and in a world already so dangerous, it's hard to imagine the night being just as deadly as they say it'll be. Then you see your first volatile, and it all makes sense. No matter how seasoned a player you are, the hunter at nighttime becomes the hunted. But anyway, our plan worked, and now everyone in the tower is in dire need of some antizin, so I volunteer to go to Rais personally to ask for help. You know, I'm starting to think that Rais here is the bad guy. And let's be real here, if Tahir right here didn't have the memory of a goldfish, things probably would have ended for our character right here and now. So, thanks Tahir. To simplify things, Rais wants us to do a bunch of errands for him in exchange for the antizin, because we can totally trust Mr. Diabolical over here to keep his word, right? So I go ahead and go do the things for him. He wants me to climb a tower to get the radios working again, but before I'm able to do that, I have to clear out all these zombies, so I use the opportunity to test a few things. One, is it possible for goons to kill zombies? While the answer might actually be yes, I didn't see any efficient results for my playthrough, so I checked that off the list. Though it is possible for them to light fires for some reason, and the fires will kill them. The second thing I tested turned out to be way more useful to the challenge. This is something I honestly am unsure I could have beaten the game without. The perk I'm talking about is weapon throw, and while it might not seem like it'd be all that great, it's actually going to be an incredibly important asset to the challenge's completion. It seems that by throwing the weapon, it restores some of the damage you do with it, even if it's broken. It's by no means perfect, however. It's very possible I lose my weapons if they fall through the map or despawn, but at least I have some sort of ranged ability, because some of the enemies we'll encounter later will be an incredible pain. It's probably a bit hard to forget, but remember XP Caliber? That really good weapon I spent 5 minutes pulling out of a rock and was a great fit for the challenge? Well, I accidentally threw it, and now you can't pick it back up, so it's gone. FP Survivor, more like FP, Dumbo. Am I right? It's safe to say without this weapon that I've got to rethink how I approach situations. For example, I died to this zombie here because the bill hook I was using didn't provide any knockback whatsoever, and every attack made the zombie stumble faster toward me. So, I won't lie, I kinda went through a mini crisis for a while as I completed more missions, wondering just what I was gonna do since without a decent weapon, the whole experience is just miserable. It took me 10 minutes to clear out these 3 zombies from this place to make it safe again. Oh, and also, Firkin! game. When you're doing these kinds of challenges, you need to be evolving your strategy at all times, because usually a game will have more and more to throw at you as it progresses. And that's just what happened here. My boy Kareem needs me to go pick up a file from a group that never returned. So I go there, and there's just a dude with a gun sitting right at the tippy top right up there. So I think it goes without saying something goes terribly wrong here. Can you guess what it is? I'll give you a second. Okay, it's been a second. Of course, the answer is C. I frickin' blew up. I could probably have thrown myself at this problem over and over again until I succeeded, but I wanted to get through this challenge with as little deaths as possible. Which, spoiler alert, there's some bad news for me later. So I leave to search for a fix to the problem that could possibly be used later on too. Let me introduce you to the next evolution of our master step-by-step plan on how to survive nightmare mode in Dying Light. There's these boosters you can make in the game, and you're absolutely going to want to use these. If I was smart, I would have went all out and used a bunch of them, but I only ever thought to use the resistance booster for some reason. So I unlocked the ability to craft them, go diving for some underwater algae, and then return to the scene of my demise to try again. It goes much better this time around. I'd say the booster gives you a 75% resistance if I had to guess, but I'm not super sure. But now that we finished the errands, we return to claim our Antizin, and wham bam, wouldn't you know it, turns out the big bad villain lied to us, and instead of 2 crates, he'll only give us 5 vials of it. The people of the tower and, myself, don't really appreciate this, since it's pretty obvious Rais is doing this to get Jade in his weird pit survival game thing. So I return to the tower to talk to the others, and come up with another plan.
How much you had to drink, kid?
Shit, oh my... don't drop me!
Wow, it's almost as if 16-year-olds shouldn't be allowed to drink alcohol for this exact reason. Who knew? Essentially, the new plan is for Jade and I to try and steal Antizin directly from Rais at a garrison they set up at the old school. But before we do that, I die to a random zombie yet again, and decide that something has got to change. I've done a lot of experimenting with weapon types up to this point, and nothing seems to be working. I even tried upgrading the weapons with blueprints, but it seems if the weapon's broken, then the modification doesn't apply to the strikes. In a last-ditch effort, I decide to see if ranking up my survivor skill to get better weapons is what I need. I go to a quarantine zone mission called the Stuffed Truffle, and collect these 3 packages before leaving and resetting, then doing it all over and over again. It's a bit cheesy to do this, and I'm not necessarily a fan of it, but if I were to try and level my survivor skill myself, this video would come out in, 2026. This is pretty much what I did for about 2 hours. I obviously won't sit here and make you all watch 2 hours of this, but I ended up getting about 250 or so packages before going and handing them over to the quartermaster for that sweet chunk of XP. Now that we maxed out on our survivor level, we should find better weapons all over the place, and we actually have a few really good abilities at our disposal now, like the camouflage ability, grappling hook, and even ballistic shields. Can we take a moment to appreciate just how broken the grappling hook is? This thing absolutely defies all logic and physics, and I love it. Turns out my plan worked because holy geez, there's an oriental cleaver here with an absurd amount of damage. So I do a bunch of exploring, pick up some weapons, and then we're ready to take on this garrison. This is the first time in the story that we're really taking on some of Rais's men. Totally not counting the time they one-hit me earlier. And these guys are such a pain. They parry just about every attack you throw at them, even some charged attacks, which I don't understand, and it ends up taking me 15 minutes to take down these 3 dudes. My strategy was to use the doors as funnels so only one of them could approach me at a time, but the real trump card I used was throwing them down onto the ground and then chucking my weapon at them. If I throw it at them while they're standing, they just deflect it like they're raised by ninjas or something. All in all, it took me a while just to take out these 3 guys, but hey, at least I didn't die, I guess. This is just the start of the mission. There were about 15 more dudes after these were taken care of, so it was really just a game of patience, waiting, and absolute misery. But eventually I made my way down to Jade, and while we don't find any Antizin, we do find some C4 plastic explosive thingies. I then had to fight more enemies before I was allowed to leave. Thanks for the help, Jade. I kid you not, it's not been 10 minutes since we found these explosives that Raheem steals them and goes to take out the hive all by himself. Not only does he fail in doing this, but he doesn't even make it to the hive before his party gets killed. So I, of course, leisurely made my way over there despite the epic, tense action music, fall to my death somehow, and meet with Raheem, who already armed the bombs to destroy the hive. You know, I've got over 400 hours in this game at this point, and I still don't know why he did this. The only thing he was really accomplishing here was blowing himself up if we didn't arrive. This hive building section of the mission is always easy, yet difficult to me at the same time. It's easy in the sense that there's no volatiles in there when there should be, but I almost always get lost inside and take unnecessary damage. Nevertheless, I found if you are put in the animation of sticking the bombs to the wall, the zombies generally don't hit you. So I take full advantage of that, and soon enough the building comes down. Aw yeah. It comes as a surprise to probably nobody, but Raheem was actually bitten and he gone now. I make jokes of this part a lot, but I actually really enjoy Roger's voice acting here.
Goddamn stupid fucking kid!
Things are about to get really crazy in this game. The nightmare difficulty really starts living up to its name past this point. I head back to the tower to tell a very destructive Brecken of Raheem's demise. Jade makes a very soap opera entrance and exit, and we hear a nuclear bomb go off just down the street at Zara's place. So I frickin' yeet myself out this window, and now we have to defend Zara's RV camper thing from more of Rais's thugs. I would love to say that these are the worst guys we'll encounter in the game, but believe it or not, they only get worse as the game progresses. These guys are bad on their own, but I need to employ a whole new strategy when taking on someone with an assault rifle. My strategy? Chuck as many deadly objects at them as I can. Hey, I'm laughing, but the strategy worked, right? Turns out these dingbats stole Zara, and Brecken is now screaming at us to get him back. So with the power of the really overpowered grappling hook, I zip to the top of this building, avoiding all these dudes with guns, and make my way inside. I'd like to say this challenge is always 100% go all out mode, but fighting Rais's thugs really is just kinda sitting back and playing things safe. So about 25 minutes go by, and now it's time for one of the worst sections of the game. This point in the game was clearly meant for you to take out these dudes with a ranged weapon. So, as you can imagine, me sprinting up to them and smacking them with a pool noodle isn't exactly an effective strategy. But the chuck everything you got at your enemy method seems to be working wonders. I'm also finding that using angles helps against single enemies, but if there's more than one, I have to come at it from a completely different approach. The shields work for not dying, but that's kinda all they're good for, since I'm not using them as weapons. The final end strategy I end up using is drinking a resistance booster, and hoping that they don't dodge my weapons when I throw them. I don't have many resistance boosters, however, so I have to be really careful and make the most of them. Eventually, with one final booster, I managed to take out the last guy and get to Zara. Turns out Rais knew we were coming, however, and his team had just gotten done watching Now You See Me, so they do their best Chris Angel impression and just kinda spawn in directly in front of me. They knock me out, and now I'm in their arena thing that they wanted Jade for. Here we are now in the arena. Not a single weapon to my name. Our only objective is to survive, and to do this, we need to kill every zombie. I run and pick up the nearest weapon, break it against the wall yet again, which is something I've had to do about 40 times by now, and set off taking these guys out one by one. I find that the most efficient method of this is to use the broken weapons to knock them over and hope they fall into some spikes. It takes about 20 minutes before we move on, and now for our biggest challenge yet. Literally. If you guys watched my 100 Days Minecraft Zombie Survival video thing, you'll recognize this guy. The Demolisher is undoubtedly one of the most intimidating enemies in the game, but honestly, he wasn't all that tough to beat. For some reason, even though my weapon's broken, enemies with a health bar tend to take the full damage of the weapon. It's almost as if these guys aren't affected by the nightmare mode settings that make all enemies damage sponges. So I kinda just trapped him in this little area, waited for him to charge, smacked him, killed the virals when they came around by knocking them off this ledge, and then finished the job with the Demolisher. I really expected this fight in particular to be much more difficult, but I ended up not even dying a single time. You'd think it'd be more difficult for us to get out of this scenario, but I just kinda my way out of there. For some reason, they stab Zara, and sadly, he doesn't make it, but we don't have the time to mourn him because we gotta, escape with our lives and stuff. So I run away. Even with their stormtrooper aim, a few of their stray bullets actually still hit me, and it really puts into perspective just how much damage you take. Now that we've escaped, we're tasked with getting Zara's research to someone he was working with named Dr. Camden, and he's located in a completely different part of the city. But first, I need to do some leveling, and after quite a bit of playing around, I finally find some good spots to do so while respecting the rules of the challenge. You see, if you stand in certain spots, you can smack the zombies with your broken weapon, and they will fall into spikes or into spots that they can't stand up. At this point in the game, the weapons are doing next to nothing to these zombies, so more and more I'm relying on making them fall into certain places where they can't stand up, so they die. The whole reason I was grinding was because there was a few extra skills in the power tree that I wanted to try out, but they didn't work for the same reason modified weapons don't, I assume. So it was all for nothing. But hey, at least now we know, so I won't spend any more time trying to game the system, and I'll use what I know works to try and beat the rest of the game. We talk to this guy to get us to the old town. He betrays us and sets up an ambush, but I just down a resistance booster and sprint past all of them because I don't have time for all that. I've got some sciencing to do. As soon as I arrive, I meet up with Troy, who was someone that contacted me when I got the radios working again earlier. She does the whole, "Oh my god, you gotta see this" thing, and we find out that the GRE has been caught trying to weaponize the virus thanks to Rais publishing the file earlier, and now they're trying to destroy the city to, like, get back at us or something. So we head off with a plan to show the world that we are still here by blowing up parts of the building in a way that only humans could accomplish. But literally everything we just did is worthless because... Directly afterward, we're contacted by Jade to meet up and think of the next stage of the plan. Apparently, she forgives me now for Raheem being dead, so I go. But when I get there, it turns out she's been kidnapped, and they're keeping her in their museum garrison base area. So I go there, and well, this clip sums up the experience pretty well. Rais, of course, as we've established, has what I like to call anime foresight. So he knew right precisely where we were going to be, at what time of day, and at what location. Let's just say I'm surprised he didn't start listing off my social security number and blood type. But anyway, he sicks his dogs after me, and I'll just go ahead and say right now that this was the toughest part of the challenge. You're not able to just sprint past these guys, and right when you think you've taken out one group, another one follows right behind them. The more I'm fighting these guys, the more my weapons are despawning and my equipment is dwindling. Even my resistance boosters don't seem to be keeping up with the sheer amount of damage that these guys are doing to me. Eventually, however, with one final weapon left in my inventory, I managed to take them all out and continue. This section was responsible for about 4 or so deaths, and that was just the beginning. There's still so much of the museum left to explore. I'm able to sprint past them for the most part, until I get to this part where I have to take out all the zombies, and then afterward, the dude with an AK-47 above me. I've stated this already, but at this point, it's almost impossible to kill zombies normally with your weapon, especially so because of the huge amount of them. Eventually, I settle with making them all fall down right around this area by this bench, and it allows me to focus my attention on the thug before moving on. I would say this part was more incredibly tedious than challenging, honestly. Finally, we meet up with Jade, and things aren't really looking all that great for her. I suppose it doesn't help that they released a crap ton of virals on us, and I just let her take care of them. Turns out she was bitten and infected a long time ago and is about to turn. But also, we're about to turn, and Rais throws down an antizin injector, forcing us to choose who lives between the both of us. So, I go through one of those drug trip sections that games do sometimes for some reason, and we get the antizin. I don't know what Rais's issue is. Maybe he just sees us as some kind of simp for Jade or something. But he gets mad at this and tells his bestest friend Tahir to come down and kill us. Tahir is a much more difficult opponent than the Demolisher was earlier because he can block and dodge attacks. But other than that, since he's got a health bar, my weapon being broken doesn't really make a difference. I do die once during this encounter, but I'm blaming that on the fact that there's 5 other dudes constantly throwing crap at me. But with one well-thrown melee weapon, he instantly dies and we get to move on. One thing leads to yet another, and the GRE still plans to go through with their firebombing of the city. So we have one more shot to get our voices heard and tell people that there are indeed still survivors in the city. The plan is to climb way up there to the top of the antenna and hook an amplifier up to it, sending our radio signals over all channels in hopes it'll get attention before they drop the bombs. So we go to possibly one of the most dangerous places we've encountered yet, signified by the never-ending thunderstorm, of course. And, well, I think my boy Crane here says it better than I could.
You got to be fucking kidding me!
I'm skipping past the 20 minutes I spent running around trying to kill these virals and trying to survive, but just know I had a heck of a time figuring out where I was supposed to go or what I was supposed to do when you're supposed to climb through this little tiny hole right here in the side of the tower entrance. The clock is ticking, and we get the word out just in time, and these planes stray away without killing thousands of people. Which really makes me wonder if that one particular pilot from earlier that destroyed the first message just kinda had it out for us. He obviously knew what he was doing. Come on. So, now that we don't have to worry about dying in a fiery ball of doom, it's time to deliver the research to Camden, but it turns out that Rais still has half the files. So, it's time we go get them back. We need to hurry though because Rais has been talking with the GRE using our communicator that he stole from us, and has made a deal to extract from Marron with the samples to weaponize them, or whatever. So, all of that being said, it's finally time for the finale of the game. I do one last bit of preparation and head for Rais's tower. The hardest part about this is going to be the actual climbing of the tower itself, because as soon as we show ourselves, Rais turns on some music and the infected start pouring in. In the beginning of our ascent, there's this section where we have to go through Rais's volatile den, and honestly, I'm not sure if it's possible to avoid being hit here. The first time I was already a bit low on health, and the volatiles caught up to me immediately and hit me. Even with a full health bar, I still barely managed to make it to the end because I ran out of stamina and had to get my breath back before continuing. If I were to be hit even one more time, I would have died, so that was definitely a close call. Rais does his absolute best to kill me before I make it to the top of the tower. Let's see, he plays the music, sets up an exploding trap that a dying Kareem warns us about, shoots an RPG at us multiple times, and even explodes the crane I'm crossing. Let's just say I feel just hated enough to be the courier from Skyrim.
Got something I'm supposed to deliver.
Finally, we make it to the top of the tower, and we're at the point of the game that makes absolutely no sense. Oh, this is a QTE. They made the final mission a QTE. Every other aspect of this game up until this point has just been me whacking people until they die or explode, but for some reason the bigwigs at Techland thought it'd be a wonderful idea to make the final fight a QTE that you have to react to within 2 milliseconds. There's also the fact that I'm awful with QTEs, so I die probably 10 to 15 times here, no joke. But eventually, I managed to get my crap together long enough to succeed, and Rais plummets to earth before we fade to black. And that's the end of Dying Light, everyone. There was so much content I had to skip over in this playthrough because it would have been useless to us. I promise the game feels more alive than what it felt like in this video when you play it normally. Dying Light is definitely in the top 2 of my favorite games of all time, and I actually think it lives up to how old it is at this point. And don't even get me started on the soundtrack. This was around the time that I was super into Assassin's Creed and parkour was just the coolest thing to me. That being said, even though I've played through the story as many times as I have, I've never done a challenge like this, so it was interesting to see what all I had to change to make it work. The game is possible to beat with only broken weapons, but I'm not sure doing it on Nightmare mode is for the faint of heart. I really found myself having to focus on finding alternative ways to kill the zombies by the end, and not even allowing the kick or other abilities that do damage added so much extra difficulty. But that being said, I still had a ton of fun, and I hope it was fun watching me suffer.